पार्टी है ये हिंदुस्तान की सुरक्षा कभी नहीं कर सकती, ये बात आप सबकी याद रखिए.
Obscenity, obnoxiousness, and obtuseness should never be dignified by a response. It's very obvious that the esteemed president of the Bharatiya Janata Party has lost it completely. The BJP should take pity on him and deposit him into a Skytrick facility. The man needs serious help.
Well, that brings us to our first question tonight. The BJP Congress tutu meme, has it degenerated the political discourse? Mr. Prasad, this isn't the first time Mr. Gadkari has found himself in the middle of a controversy like this. Why does this keep happening with him?
Well, the comparison is entirely wrong. The first part he immediately said, he regretted also. But this part, what he said was, he was basically articulating the pain of those who have suffered because of terrorist attack. Now, can we deny, Nidhi, that for 4 years the files were kept pending at the instance of Shiraj Patil, the former Home Minister? Sheila Dixit has confirmed it. Even now the file is pending. So many people lost their life, and today your channel, and I congratulate you, is playing the observations of Afzal Guru, where he said their aim was to kill the entire Indian political leadership. Now basically what he said was articulating that pain, how long he will keep on dilly-dallying.
But do you have, does it have to be done in that way?
I would put it a little differently. Apart from agony, is punch and pun a part of political dialogue or not? You can quarrel about the language, but punch and pun, apart from the agony, is a part of democratic discourse. And therefore what the Congress party today reacted about the president of the main opposition party. I asked today a question, I hope my good friend Abhishek would respond, that the language used by the Congress spokesperson today about the president of the principal opposition, is it the language of Congress party as well? I regret to say that.
Well, Dr. Singhvi, according to Mr. Prasad, Nitin Gadkari was in agony, but was it fair for Manish Tiwari to be so harsh? I mean,
no, I think just let's put it, first of all, this is not a discussion about the merits or demerits of the Afzal Guru issue. This is a discussion which you rightly raised about the lexicon of political discourse. Now, it is easy for me to respond in the same language Mr. Gadkari did. But there's no point. The real point is that the BJP, and I'm not talking of A or B, the BJP has shown over the years a consistency as far as abusive political discourse is concerned. I remind you of Mr. Modi, not once, not twice, but several times, from Michael so-and-so Lindo to so many other epithets he uses. I remind you of Vinay Katyar in Uttar Pradesh. I remind you of Mr. Gadkari a few weeks ago, and he obviously hasn't learned the lesson. So the point I'm making is that the BJP is not a party with a difference, and when in the few occasions when the BJP feels bad, they do not condemn it. In contrast, there might have been a few aberrations, I can't think of any at the moment,
by the Congress. Should Manish Tiwari have said that Nitin Gadkari has lost it and should be taken to a psychiatric facility?
This is in the context of a reaction. Let us look at the action first. Now the point is that today...
If you say they're wrong, should the Congress stoop to the same level?
Look, different people may choose different words. Different people may choose different words. I personally don't believe that, I don't think the audience loves these kind of abusive wrangling matches. And I think, but there is a pattern to the way the BJP has been using language. They have done it to provoke. They have done it in a very rabid way. They have done it over a period of time, and they have done it without any punitive remarks from the top leadership.
But many political observers actually, when they look at Nitin Gadkari, are surprised that he's landed into one controversy after another. You know, when it comes to this, I mean, Mr. Advani, when he was BJP chief, I don't recall ever being in any controversy over the use of bad language or inappropriate language.
First, Nitin, let me clarify. Now he expanded the discussion to the entire BJP person. I didn't want to join that. But since he had said publicly, who used the expression "maut ke saudagar"?
That's not abuse.
Please. Please. I did not interrupt you. The Congress spokesperson called Narendra Modi Adam Khor. Come on. What are you talking about?
Nobody did.
Please, my good friend Abhishek Singhvi, I don't want to go into a slanging match. But since we have started discussion on a different note altogether, I explain that. And again I say, Mr. Gadkari was fair enough in the first part to immediately clarify and express their regret and even apologize.
But he said today he has no regrets for what he said about Afzal Guru.
Let's see his point. What he has said was basically kind of conveying the agony of the people in the wake of how deliberately has been done, and a kind of a pun also. Please learn to accept pun and also some punch in the political discourse.
All right, Vinod Sharma, as a keen political observer,
I'm very neutral.
What is this? Whatever that means, but what's going on here? Why is our political discourse become so bitter?
Comment.
Ravi is in the habit of sort of putting me on the defensive, but I believe that offense is the best part of defense. The problem basically is not about pun or punch. The problem actually is that our political class lacks a sense of repartee and humor. You can be disarming and yet be devastating, and for that you need a degree of learning. I'm sorry, the people who are under discussion in this panel today singularly lack that. They may have acquired a position, but they lack a worldview. I was quite aghast when I heard the BJP president. Personally, I have nothing against him. It's BJP's choice, and the voters shall make their choice. That when he used when he compared Lalu Prasad Yadav and Mulayam Singh, two leading lights of Indian politics, with dogs, licking dogs, I mean, I just felt that, where is what is the Muhavara? Publicly, again, I disagree, Ravi.
I disagree. Say here that I like dogs.
Ravi, I mean, even the canines have some sense of self-respect. They would like to be dragged into and all of us love dogs. Most dog lovers will object to it.
I do.
I would object to it because I own a Labrador. He's the best of the dogs, family dogs. I own two, and the way he looks at me, my heart goes out for him. So I don't think they are comparable with any politician. They have their own position.
But on a serious note, let me ask Mr. Habibullah. As an eminent citizen of this country, as a bureaucrat, you work with politicians all the time. On a serious note, there are serious problems this country faces today, and you're looking at it right now. Your crucial state of J&K, which is facing a tremendous crisis, rising prices, which are such an issue. Do you see that there is complete lack of a will on the part of both main parties to constructively come together on any major issue?
Well, since you put the question of Jammu and Kashmir, it is my belief, of course, that now the responsibility for working towards bringing about resolution of the present crisis rests primarily with the political leadership and across the board, not belong to one party or another. Because what is the problem that is there? The problem is that the youth has expressed great dissatisfaction and despair, even desperation with the system that is there at the present time. Children have died. In the last 15 or 20 days, the firing that has taken place, the majority of the people who died there are children. Now, in this case, that is the future of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. The future, and that is part of the future of the greater.
Do you see all parties coming together and actually?
They have not now. I'm happy to say that, of course, Jan Omar has held a meeting, I believe, today with the different party leaders. But the question is not just holding a meeting, talking to each other. That's the first step, yes. But then one has to go beyond that. Even at the national level, I think it is important on the Kashmir issue, particularly the present Kashmir issue, to develop a consensus. Yes, obviously when you have a situation like that developing in any part of the country, and particularly in Jammu and Kashmir, which has been at the center of international terrorism and such activities, there will be people who will want to keep the pot boiling. There will be people who will be wanting to fish in troubled waters. So just because you have them does not mean that necessarily all these.
We're going to talk about that in more detail, and I guess the point we were trying to make is, getting the two national parties at least to be able to talk about this. I just wanted Ranjana Kumari's first comments as an observer of the political scene.
But I think indecent use of language, when you're not using it decently, it reflects the depth, the lack of depth of political understanding of issues. We miss Vasant Sathis and Madhu Linas in Parliament, who really, not only raise the issues, as you were saying, which has the kind of political concern, it also they educated the young generation about what is happening in the country, what kind of issues which it's not about dog, and it's not about, saying things to each other and trying to spat anything that you feel like and say. So it's really the lack of political training, and I think the Indian political leadership needs a good language training, whether it is in Hindi or English. I think really, because also for pun's sake, they bring in women every time. I mean, even here, what kind of a comment was that? To say that, okay, they have given their daughter to him or something like that. I mean, what kind of, don't they see that it hurts the sentiments of a large population of this country? It really represents lack of their own, commitment to whatever is going on in the country, but also saying just loosely anything, everything, and then saying they regret. I think they have regretted way too many times.
Is it possible, Mr. Prasad, for two main parties at least to be able to work together on crucial issues that this country faces without getting into this slanging match?
Vidhi, first of all, let me clarify. If there is a spat today, I again stand by what I said about my president. But how does it lead to a conclusion on your part that we cannot work together? Advani ji,
You are not.
just a minute, because there are two different political parties. But on major issues, Advani ji told the Lok Sabha that they are willing to cooperate with the Manmohan government in the fight against terror. Nitin Gadkari, after becoming the president, publicly said on major issues, particularly on national security, they are willing to enter full cooperation. Therefore, this sweeping analysis of yours, or from that Ranjana ji, I have my respect for her, that merely because there is a spat, therefore we cannot work together, I regret to say, is too sweeping a comment.
No, but you have to draw a line. You have to draw a line where, how far can...
Allow me to.
Yes, please speak, but then I think... Yeah.
Now, I again say, please keep the pun and fun and punch alive in the political discourse.
Are you saying the Congress doesn't have a sense of humor? That this was basically...
Well, as far as the reaction of the spokesperson is concerned, I can say sorry, they do not have.
I will say with full
Can I give you an example of humor in Parliament? Or a punch?
You see, once Feroz Gandhi was called a lapdog of Pandit Nehru by a minister in the government, and then that minister was involved in some major scam, and Mr. Feroz Gandhi was initiating the debate, and he said, Mr. Speaker, sir, the honorable minister had once called me a lapdog of the Prime Minister. And he thought that he himself was the pillar of the Congress party. Now I shall do to him what a dog does to a pillar. That's humor. You can't object to it. But you need to have that kind of a learning for it.
I wonder why dogs keep coming back into this. Dr. Singhvi.
You see, there is a vast difference between
People don't like you all abusing each other. That's the bottom line.
This is a question you have to ask me. Who abused us? Who abused 2 months ago?
Nidhi, one thing I would also say that, sorry, please don't allow a provocative debate on the television as well. When we go for TV debate, I regret to say the manner in which questions are asked, provocative, if you keep quiet, therefore you have no stand, at times heated exchange also is because of that. Okay? You are nice, but what about others, please?
You see, there is a huge place, as Vinod is rightly saying, for wit and humor in Parliament and outside Parliament, in public life. Indian wit and humor could be different, is different from the English. But then, I think over the years there is a decline. We don't have the George Bernard Shaw and Oscar Wilde exchanges. We don't have the Winston Churchill and Lady Aston exchanges. We don't have the Pilu Modi and Bhupesh Gupta exchange, the famous one about.
Absolutely.
So there is a change of time, and this is a faster time. They didn't have the media picking up and eavesdropping on everything they said. You have the media today, that's also true. But having said all that, and having seen the decline both in language and in parliamentary standards, I think there's a huge amount of space. When I was a student in India, I'll tell you, we had this lovely program, and some of you have now started it. I'm talking about 30 years ago, 25 years ago. Not the 9 o'clock news. Not the 9 o'clock news was the prime time news giving spoofs on politicians. But it was done so artistically and so well that no Prime Minister of Britain and no Defence Minister of Britain objected. You started some of these things now in NDTV with that animation things. Yeah. But this has come very late. Even that has to be handled carefully. So the point is that there is space for humor, but everybody has to work towards it.
All right. I'm glad to see that you're smiling
very little. A allow a space for typical Indian earthy common sense and humor as well. Okay, not always George Bernard Shaw and England.
No, I think that today, but you can SMS you can SMS such humor. There's a lot of audience for that. But don't bring it to Parliament. Or don't bring it to public discourse.
Can both of you come together and justify how much of public time and resources are being wasted in these kind of language debates? And is this a question of language, or further is it a question of how we are channelizing our time and resources in...
It's a waste of time. This total is a waste of time. Yes, sir.
I have a question for Dr. Singhvi and Prashad ji, that don't you think all the political parties, the spokesperson generally, to show their candidness, because the education and things have become so liberalized, that candidness and egoism have combined together and things have become so miserable for the people of this country that every day either a president of the Congress or the BJP or X or a Y party are lost in all sorts of debates, and the major issues, like we started with Afzal Guru, the things are lost and everything we are discussing, all these issues which are not supposed to be
That's
discussed.
an interesting point, because Mr. Prasad, in the middle of all of this, while you try to raise what many would say is a valid issue on Afzal Guru, that no one is reporting today. Everyone is only reporting what Mr. Gadkari, the name calling, and then the Congress's, unseemly reaction.
I will reply to all my young friends and also what you said. Yes, the pain and agony I used at the very outset was basically about Afzal Guru's delay in hanging in spite of Supreme Court judgment. But 20 years ago, this would not have been possible. Today, because media is 24-hour news, everything is said is picked up and becomes an object of national debate, and we have to react. Maybe right or wrong is not the issue. Therefore, only politicians are to be blamed will not be the right way of saying, because I'm sorry to say, with due respect to Nidhi and our channel, media also picks up only this. I was sitting in the ante room, and for 20 minutes I was sitting there, all the splat was being shown. That is equally important. The second part, this young lady which asked this question. We are two different political parties. We are not one. We would differ. If they will make a mess of food economy and price rise, it is our duty to criticize them. But merely because we criticize on national security, we cannot work together, or we don't have healthy respect for each other, is a conclusion which you are drawing is far-fetched. And if the debate would come in public domain, courtesy NDTV or other channels, they will seek our opinion.
I cannot say that
this is how it will go.
A national party president decides to abuse, another party, and it's not the media's fault. I mean, for us,
I'm not blaming you. She said wastage of time. How it comes?
It's a legitimate story, I think.
I think here to make a distinction between individual comments by a political worker or a political participant
and the president of a national
party, and the office bearer or a senior office bearer of any party. And there's a vast difference. If an office bearer, president is very high, but even lesser than the president, makes a comment which is abusive, and I totally disagree. I think by definition, an abuse can never be a pun or a punch. That's the whole meaning of a pun or a punch. It is sophisticated, it is not an abuse, and carries your point. But if somebody who is an office bearer makes that, then I think to expect the media to be self-denying is ridiculous.
I didn't say that.
Because they will pick it up and they will play it on. But I
One last comment.
I do agree that these are not game changer issues over time. Over a period of time they are forgotten. But somewhere in the psyche of the people it remains the character, the nature, the sanskar of that person, and of course partly the party.
So all the same, both of you are not accepting that both your spokesperson, the president here and your spokesperson, really did not draw the line before saying what they were saying. So please accept that. So the future, the debate is not to blame the media, but the debate should be within the parties and say that, look, you have to follow certain kind of norms when you are speaking about something.
I think that's a good note to end this segment on. I have to take a break, but when we come back, we are going to talk about the other big story this week, that's been Jammu and Kashmir. For the third straight day, strict curfew has been imposed in the Kashmir Valley. Tonight, we're going to look at the road ahead. What are the options for the state government and for the centre? Welcome back. It was the third day of strict curfew and uneasy calm in the Kashmir Valley. Today, police arrested Shabir Wani, an activist of the hardline faction of the Hurriyat Conference, who's been accused of engineering the violence. Audio tapes which allegedly have Shabir speaking to another separatist were leaked to the media yesterday. With Omar Abdullah's government under sharp attack for its handling of the situation, tonight we ask, what's the way forward for Jammu and Kashmir? Mr. Habibullah, what is the way forward? You touched upon it, but when everyone talks about a political process and political engagement in J&K, what does that mean?
Well, I think in talking about the way forward, one first must understand what the problem is. The problem has arisen because of the manner in which certain law and order situations were handled, first in Sopore, then in Srinagar, then finally in Anantnag, which has led to a great deal of anger and in fact a state of insurrection by the youth of Jammu and Kashmir. That is why I mentioned when I was talking about it in the earlier segment that the youth of Jammu and Kashmir and the youth of the valley are the future of that state. Therefore, the way forward, in my view, lies only in one way, and that is the leadership of the state, whether it is the leadership of what you call the mainstream parties or the separatist parties, because this is a matter of common interest to all, must come together at least on this one point and go out and meet the people. As you know, in one of the programs that I participated in yesterday, Ms. Mehbooba had mentioned that nobody is willing to listen to us anymore. They're disillusioned with us. But then you have to win back the confidence of the people, and particularly the young people.
Do you therefore think that New Delhi's explanation of this as being instigated purely by separatists, the Lashkar, Pakistan, all of the leaks we've been seeing in the media, is in a sense short-sighted and wrong?
Well, I wouldn't say it's short-sighted or wrong. If there is such action taking place, then it should be pointed out. But the point is that you cannot ascribe the entire problem to just this. As I mentioned earlier, you will have all kinds of elements trying to fish in troubled waters, trying to keep the pot boiling. There are those interests who would like to embarrass India on Kashmir. Certainly they would like to embarrass their own government, the J&K government. But you know, a terminology which has become very common now is the terminology of trust deficit. It's usually used in terms of the dialogue between India and Pakistan. May I say that there is a trust deficit between the leadership of the people of Jammu and Kashmir themselves and the youth, particularly the youth. And this trust deficit is across the board. It is you may call it, you may talk of the Hurriyat, you may talk of the PDP, you may talk of the Congress party, you may talk of the National Congress, all political parties. Therefore, they need to come together to address this issue, because this issue concerns the future of the state and therefore of the country as a whole.
Let me ask Mr. Prasad that, you know, I often feel that the criticism of Omar Abdullah has not been entirely fair. I think he takes a share of the blame. There is a responsibility he and his government have. But I'd like to ask Dr. Singhvi this as well. It's also a fact that there are people within the National Conference that are not working with him. There are people within your Congress party that are not working with him, that would rather have an alliance with the PDP. There are people within the Congress, within the state, that are fighting with each other. There is a political mess in the state, even among the main parties that rule there. So, is it fair, therefore, to completely blame him for the present crisis?
First of all, certainly there are problems, very distressing situation in J&K, but it's certainly nowhere near as bad as you have just painted it, as if the Congress and the NCP is falling apart within each party. Let's just put it very quickly in perspective, very quickly. You cannot start throwing the baby out with the bathwater in this manner, and everybody's talking of complete obliteration of governance. After all, this very Kashmir, till 3 months ago, was being lauded as something which had reached probably a relative peak of its normalcy in the last several years.
Is that a mistake that was made? Because this doesn't happen
overnight. The point is, therefore, it cannot be that the same government, the same people have suddenly become non-governors. Kashmir was on the mend. Kashmir had a remarkable, statistically, by Home Ministry figures, a remarkable improvement in killings. Kashmir had a huge tourist influx. They are not things to be ignored. I'm not suggesting that tourist influx is the parameter of normalcy in Kashmir, but it is one of the indicators.
That doesn't mean aviation is not there.
That having been said, I consider this a temporary aberration. I consider it a very bad aberration, a terrible, regrettable, distressing thing, but it's still an aberration. Don't think it's the norm. And certainly part of it, and I entirely agree, I'm not stressing the whole of it, a part of it is definitely inspired by elements across the border or elements directly in touch within the border with those outside the border. One of the exposés you had in 2 channels yesterday showed that, those conversations. It's not to suggest that it is not, there is equally, I suggest, a very strong feeling of alienation and anger, after all, from families who
what do you think Delhi should do? Look ahead.
Delhi is rightly, we have to assuage the feelings of those families and those people who have lost their dear ones by saying that the strictest action will be taken on the basis of inquiries. It is not as if the army or the CRPF goes away scot-free. We have to raise them. But equally, we have to keep a firm
hand. The past has shown us that they do, that the army is not held accountable.
But we have equally shown, no, that's not so.
I'll give you the example where the CBI has indicted the army and there has been no
There are indictments, let me tell you, for insurgency situation of a comparable kind anywhere in the world. The Indian government has shown a greater healing touch, a more inclusive approach, and a more inquiry-oriented punishing approach for defaulters than any other country.
I'd like Vinod Sharma.
Frankly, I'll be honest, and I don't agree entirely with Abhishek. You see, the problem has been on since 2008, in the wake of Amarnath controversy, when all political parties walked in different directions despite having gone to Kashmir as one delegation. Mahbooba Mufti joined the procession to cross the line of control. The BJP and the Congress could not come to terms with each other. There has been no effort at all. Kashmir has been treated like any other state by the political parties. And once the elections are over, the complacency sets in.
Exactly, that's the word I was going to use.
They should not forget that we are fighting a perennial, unending battle in Kashmir for the mind space of the people there. And you cannot allow the talking space to be occupied by Hurriyat and other separatist elements between 2 elections. And that is exactly what happens. You asked a question, what are the options before Mr. Omar Abdullah? All options are there because he hasn't exercised a single option till date. He is a far-left figure at the head. His father is away to London. He heads the national conference. He is the leader of the national conference. He is away to London. I am also told
he's back today. Yeah.
He may be back today. Thanks so much. That he's finally condescended to come back. But I don't think that any public person who is the leader of a state like Kashmir can afford absenteeism. Not the ruling party's president. And the signal is very clear that Omar Abdullah has nobody by his side, including his own father. It may be his fault, it may be Mr. Farooq Abdullah's fault, but by default, Mr. Omar Abdullah today has shown Mr. Farooq Abdullah as a better administrator than him. He was never rated as a great administrator.
Is that a fair assessment, Mr. Habibullah?
I think that your discussion is going off the point. The issue really is not so much whether Omar has done well or not so well. These things can be discussed as time goes on. I think when you started the conversation, when the discussion, you highlighted the point that this is the 3rd straight day of complete curfew in the valley. Now the question is that one can spend one's time ascribing or apportioning blame that it was his fault, it was the Hurriyat has not done this, Omar is isolated, Farooq is away. These things can be discussed, what their repercussions were. You have the time, the armchairs and all that to actually discuss these points at leisure. But are they going to be the way forward? The way forward is quite clear to my mind, and that is the political leadership primarily of the state. The responsibility lies primarily within the state because these are the same people, the same state. They have been elected. A certain element, a certain section of the political class has been elected to authority to actually govern, and in an election which now everybody concedes was completely free and fair, they have won with wide public participation. Many of these young people who are out on the streets were actually among those who were participating in that election process, campaigning, voted. The new government was elected with a high degree of promise and a great deal of potential. All this was there. Something has gone wrong. The very youth which has come out to campaign for all this is now in a state of rebellion and in a state of violence. The point there, therefore, is that we have to, what has to be to me,
you're saying the responsibility lies with all of them.
The political leadership there, it must reach out to the people, and reach out how? It's no use going to Baramulla and sitting in the dark bungalow and saying, please come and see me, or sitting in your chamber and saying, come and tell me what your problems are. One has to now, at this stage, go out to them. go out into the mohallas, go out and meet the people. Yesterday, this morning I think I was on a program where there was a young journalist from Kashmir who had spoken to the parents of Tufail Mattu, the child who died in the very first instance in Srinagar. He was just a child who was passing by and he was struck by something and he died. And the parents said that nobody has come to call on her.
I think that's a very important point.
The point is that even if the political leadership cannot go or something, the civil administration is there. There's a whole civil bureaucracy there. Are they to be sitting inside their offices and saying, yes, come and see me? No. They must go out.
Very, very good points you've made there, Mr. Habibullah. Mr. Prasad, your first thoughts. What do you think? What does the BJP think?
Three quick points. The election was fair and the separatists were roundly defeated. Even Sajjad Lone contested and got defeated. Now, once the political process is supported by the people, separatism starts. Recently, Kheer Bhavani temple, 15,000 people went there from all across the country. The Kashmiri Pandits went there. Abhishek talked about the rising number of tourists. Why is it that when Kashmir is limping back to normalcy, from across the border, paid goons start creating disturbance? And by the way, when you talk of Kashmiriyat, we all for that, it's a part of India, but Leh is okay. The whole Jammu is okay. It's only 4 districts of Kashmir or maybe 5 districts. Now what is to be done? If army or CRPF has done something wrong, I am all saying let action be taken. But we need not forget that those people are dying, sacrificing their life to keep the integrity of Kashmir with India. Let us not underestimate their sacrifice. Now, having said that,
I think nobody is underestimating the sacrifice.
Therefore, the way to always condemning the CRPF is something, or the security forces, is not a right approach. Now, what is the way forward? The way forward is for the political leaders and political parties of Kashmir who have got people with them to reclaim the political space. These separatists have always been defeated by the people. The last election or the present election recently held. Yet they claim to become the sole voice of Kashmiriyat upon instigation from across the border.
Is part of the problem that the BJP is refusing to recognize that there is also a genuine alienation in the Kashmir Valley, that it's not just about paid protesters? Is that, you need to recognize that there is a people there that has a grievance, that even if they did vote in the elections, it doesn't mean that their sentiments have been completely pro-India in that sense.
Well, there is something I will differ with you. If that were been the case, the voting would not have been there. All the candidates took a vow under the Constitution of India. But since you blame the BJP, are you being fair, Nidhi?
I'm not blaming you. I'm asking whether you understand.
Bajpayee ji went there. He talked about इंसानियत के दायरे में बातचीत हो सकती है. Advani ji talked to the Hurriyat leaders when he was the Deputy Prime Minister and Home Minister. But there can be no alternative for good governance, which Habibullah Sahab talked about.
Ranjana ji,
I think the serious issue is that the youth is getting alienated, and the democratic space which was created after election has not been really used by the local leadership as well as by the national leadership to engage in dialogue with the young people. And why it is that the smallest of provocation ignites them? Because there is a lack of proper democratic dialogue within the valley, and it's not enough to say that only 4 districts. I mean, that's really undermining the issue and the problem of the people there. If people are feeling alienated, then there is responsibility of the political leadership. I think that's where they failed. That's where they're failing. So that's the last 2 comments.
There has been a single instance in many years of all political parties getting together on a common platform publicly and issuing a rally in Srinagar to tell the people of Kashmir that they belong to us, everything will be done to bring succor to them.
No, in fact, today there
will
not even attend your
that's it. So there has been no demonstration of unity.
Very small point.
There has been no demonstration of unity. There is no synchronization of action in defense of the people of that state, their rights and their aspirations. And unless you do that, no number of elections you will hold there would be of any use. You have to consistently be reaching out to the people between elections, during elections, before elections.
All right, Mr. Habibullah, last word.
I think a certain fine distinctions have to be made to place this in perspective. There is no doubt at all that the visits of Prime Minister Vajpayee to Jammu and Kashmir and his statements there completely changed the situation there, and that is the trend that has been continuing, all on the constructive side, as Mr. Singhvi has mentioned over here just now. But the point is that what is the problem there? The problem is not generally the people of Jammu and Kashmir, not so much now. There is disaffection and all that is there. It is the youth. The youth are facing a period of where they're feeling hopeless. They're feeling that nobody cares for them. And this is not only with regard to the political leadership, even with regard to their own society. And Mr. Prashant, I mentioned that this point is not only regarding the mainstream political parties. This disillusion also goes across the separatist leadership itself,
also, exactly.
Which also they feel is not really taking them in any direction. So the point is, therefore, what I'm pleading for is that the entire political leadership should come together, whether it be separatists or otherwise. It is probably true, and as you say, that from across the border, their efforts are trying to do this, and it's probably also so that the separatist leadership is trying to take advantage of that to try and instigate something. But they should realize, and I think they must realize, that this is a question of the future of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. They all aspire, they all claim, whether they actually are doing it or not is another matter, but they all claim that they're working for a better future of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. And what is that future?
I really have to...
Very quick one point, very quic. We had foreign secretary talk with Pakistan. Chidambaram Sahab went to Pakistan. Pakistan assured that action will be taken on the front of terrorism. And if this is what is happening in Kashmir from across the border, it is a serious matter on which government of India need to
I think we need to realize that there is an internal problem between Delhi and Srinagar, and it's not just about Delhi and Islamabad this time. All right, I have to take a break. Kashmir is something that I think we can go on talking about endlessly, but one more big issue. It is my state, it's something I do care about, but I have to take a break to talk about another issue which has got so much feedback this week. The issue of Khap Panchayats. The cabinet divided on a law to take on what we are calling dishonor killings. Is there really any political will to fight this problem? Welcome back. It's truly unbelievable in the times that we live in that we even have to debate this next issue, so-called honor killings that are taking place with a disturbing frequency. But there's no consensus even within the cabinet on a special law to deal with the problem. Yet another group of ministers has been set up to look at the issue, bringing us to our next question tonight. Is there a lack of political will to take on Khap Panchayats? Dr. Singhvi, the group of ministers, I think as one left leader joked, the GOM has replaced the GOI, the Government of India. You have as many as 60 group of ministers looking at all kinds of issues, and here's another one that's been set up, which is primarily seen as a delaying tactic because you have no consensus.
On the contrary, GOMs and EGOMs have got works done. Over the last few years, yes, they do involve a certain amount of delay, but they get work done because sometimes the cabinet itself becomes unwieldy and too large. That's as far as the general principle goes. On Khap Panchayats, I think you're looking at it totally wrongly. Ultimately, you're looking at this difference. But please understand that this government, for the first time, has initiated a change. We are the ones who initiated the proposal for a law. We didn't initiate the proposal for a law to have egg on our face and not to enact the law ultimately.
But do you acknowledge the differences of opinion for political reasons?
The differences of opinion, as you call them, are actually discussions and differences about the nuances and the nitty-gritty of the law. I think ultimately a short deferment of a few weeks will lead to a very good piece of legislation and improve. And last point, I think it's important that such things are passed through the states also. You're amending the IPC and the CRPC. If you don't go through the states now, you will ultimately have them having objections and delay the whole thing longer. So in a sense, you are preempting it by circulating it through the states now.
From what we understand, within the cabinet there was a lot of debate about whether the current laws, existing laws should be strengthened or whether there needs to be a separate law to deal with this. What's your view?
Look, I was not in the cabinet meeting, and anybody who was is not going to tell you what happened. But I'll tell you 2 points. Yes, I'll tell you straight away 2 things. It is important to note that much of this is about individual state level nitty-gritty policing. By creating a special law, you will not solve the problem by itself, because a Khap murder is a murder. A murder is a murder is a murder. You don't want to define murder. If I kill somebody illegally, there is no such thing as honor which defends that killing. So you need to improve the police forces one level. But equally we are trying now to create a special exception or a special provision to section 300 to define in a collectivity of a Khap. Now that requires some nuance in terms of language and also state support. I think it happens after 3 weeks and we are saying ourselves that we will try to bring it in the monsoon session. That's not far away. Give it a few weeks. Don't consider it a breakdown. We are the ones who got the legislation.
Okay, I hope what Congress spokesperson is saying is right, because when you look at the GOM and the role in terms of women's legislation in relation to women's issues, whether it is trafficking in women and children, whether it is sexual harassment at workplace, whether it is amending the dowry law, whether it is sexual abuse of children, whether I can really name the laws which have been all stuck with GOM, and somehow it looks like that when government doesn't want to take responsibility, it doesn't want to respond to a situation which is alarming, which is so many young lives have gone just in past. I don't know, how can we really sit in this nation where, we're talking about development, we're talking about economy growing, we're talking about all kinds of issues, and we are not looking at how young boys and girls are being killed. And then there is a response, okay, fine, it could be very nice way of saying, okay, fine, let GOM go into the nitty-gritty. Can't they go into the nitty-gritty now? Can't they just respond to a situation when the fire is burning? Can't you, work towards dousing the fire? No, one more thing, Nidhi, about the law, existing law, murder. This is not plain and simple murder. This is a murder which has been supported by the communities of people. This is a murder, family engages itself in the murder. This is a murder in which it is glorified. This is a murder. It's almost like sati. It's almost like the way sati was dealt with. Also DM was given in sati law to the power to take suo motu action. All those things will have to be brought in. You cannot call it just simple murder. This is much more heinous and much more criminal than any society has ever seen.
Mr. Prasad, does the BJP support a separate special law on this?
2 points at the very outset. When such a situation is there in the country, deeply unfortunate, we who are in politics need to rise above and looks toward the future generation as to what kind of India we want to make. Under no circumstances, what is happening on the name of honor, dishonor killing can be justified. There may be social dimension, Khap Panchayat may be thousands of years old, but I personally feel the party will take a formality once they come with their own decision. Certainly, we will be helping also. But after all, do we only exist in the country for the sake of vote bank? Or we owe something towards the future generation as well? That's the larger question those who are in politics have to address today. And by no stretch of imagination, whatever be the provocation, whatever be the justification, this kind of killing of young boys and girls can be justified. Okay. It's a very important issue. Therefore, I thought I must flag my concern very clearly and eloquently that today, whether it is Abhishek or my party, will have to take a call. And as quickly as possible, as Radharanji has stated. And maybe, apart from our job, the civil society will have to join together to educate to the people of the country, the concern area, that the course being adopted is not the right course. This is how I see it. We have to work together.
Sharma, do you see the Congress actually coming to a decision quickly on this? Because we see leaders from there, particularly from Haryana, shockingly young leaders like Naveen Jindal who came out in support essentially of Khap Panchayat. So do you think the Congress is facing...
I don't think
I guess you did, but...
Jindal doesn't belong to the Khap Panchayat. He is only doing it for vote politics. I understand Huda saying something. I have seen...
But Huda has also condemned it.
Yeah, Huda has condemned it. Everybody has condemned honor killing. Unfortunately, in this debate, 2 issues have got intermixed. One, the institution of Khap Panchayat, and the other, the honor killings. There are Khap Panchayats which have done good work. And any social change, is very glacial. It comes progressively. We saw the debate on Sati, Roop Kamar, opposed to Roop Kamar. And I saw even people like VP Singh, being reluctant to come out openly against the Sati Pratha at that point of time, initially. But progressively, consensus were built, and now we have a special law against prevention of Sati. Because don't forget that there was a period in our history where Satis were worshipped, and you have to contest that through civil society, through a change by bringing about social change. What I'm saying, I am not for a moment defending honor killing. What I am saying is that the institution of Khap, if we are going to have a face-off with the institution of Khap, in the course of
I didn't say
don't do that. Because you will not be able to do that.
That has a larger...
You have to distinguish the two. You have to distinguish the two. You have to delete the honor killing. And secondly,
I myself said
there has been much debate.
I myself said that.
I am not supporting, please for God's sake, I am not free to support honor killing.
I have just a minute left, yeah.
But what I'm saying is that, what I'm saying is that please draw a line between the institution of CAP and honor killings. And this whole business that whoever is present would be charged for murder, it is most unrealistic. Because you will not be able to get conviction or even 1-2 permanent lawyers are sitting there. You can't be getting 200 people convicted for 2 murders, It can't happen. I mean, it's unrealistic legally.
Is it? No. I think this is absolutely, Vinodji is saying absolutely wrong, because in Sati when people are there and then, it's not just about so many people getting into and getting punishment, but so many people will be deterred from glorifying it, from going and worshipping it, and from going and justifying. And I think CAP is the first institution in the country, CAP Panchayats, who started off the whole thing. That is why they are held responsible. If Manoj Babli case, one of the members of the CAP is also been, part of the 5 people who've been, by the court judgment punished, then it is important. It is important. No, fine. Show to the all these young people.
One second.
No, wait. All these young people will have to be convinced that parties are sincere about people.
You just got proof on this panel that there is an honest difference of opinion. Vinod doesn't support honor killings, but he does have a question mark on the legislation. Now, if this was a GOM or a group, would it not require some 2 weeks time more? That's all that happened. There is a deferment of 2 weeks to 3 weeks in an attempt to get a better result.
Okay, and you're making a commitment that the Congress is still committing to bringing this law in the monsoon session. I am completely out of time. I have my producer yelling at me. I'd like to thank the audience, the panel, and I'd like to thank our viewers. Please do send us your views at ndtv.com/Nidhi. We'll see you next week at the same time. Goodbye.
Left, right and center. Brought to you by